The message glared up at me from my phone screen, its clinical tone feeling like a slap across the face. Don't wait up tonight. Late meeting. I stared at those 7 words from Emily, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. After 12 years of marriage, you develop a sense for these things when something just feels off. Maybe it was the period at the end, or the complete lack of an emoji, or even the absence of our usual love you sign off. Whatever it was, something in those 7 words set off alarm bells. I put my phone down on my desk, trying to focus on the architectural plans spread out before me. The Seattle skyline stretched out beyond my office window, gray and misty as usual. I'd built a good life here. Respected architect, beautiful home in Queen Anne, and what I had always thought was a rock-solid marriage. Everything okay, boss? My assistant, Delia, hovered in the doorway, concern etched on her face. Yeah, fine, I lied, minimizing the message on my phone. Just some changes to the Henderson project, nothing major. Delia nodded, unconvinced. The team's heading out for drinks. You coming? I think I'll pass tonight. Got some things to finish up here. She lingered for a moment longer than necessary. Don't work too late, Jonathan. Even brilliant architects need sleep. After she left, I picked up my phone again and stared at Emily's message. We'd been together since college. She was pre-law while I studied architecture. We grew up together, built careers together. She'd become a successful corporate attorney while I established my own architectural firm. We were that couple everyone envied. Successful, seemingly happy with the perfect balance of career ambition and personal connection. At least, that's what I thought we were. I thumbed through our recent text exchanges looking for clues. When had her messages changed? When had "Can't wait to see you tonight. Love you" turned into "Don't wait up"? I scrolled back through weeks of conversations, and a pattern emerged. About 2 months ago, the tone shifted. Her messages became briefer, more practical. Meeting updates, schedule changes, grocery lists. The emotional content had slowly drained away, like water circling a drain. So gradual I hadn't even noticed until now. I put my phone down and rubbed my eyes. I was being paranoid. Emily was in the middle of a huge corporate merger case. She was working 14-hour days. Of course, she was stressed and distracted. Still, something didn't sit right. I packed up my things and headed home earlier than usual, stopping to pick up ingredients for Emily's favorite pasta dish. Maybe what we needed was a night in reconnecting. I'd cook dinner, open a bottle of wine, and remind her that we were still us, regardless of how busy life got. Our home was empty when I arrived. I moved through the quiet rooms, turning on lights against the growing evening darkness. The house felt different somehow, as if the walls themselves were holding secrets. I ran my hand along the marble countertop in the kitchen we'd renovated together last year. We'd argued about the backsplash. She'd wanted subway tile. I'd pushed for something more modern. We'd compromise on a herringbone pattern we both loved. A good marriage was built on compromises like that. At least that's what I'd always believed. In our bedroom, I changed out of my work sea clothes and headed for the shower. That's when I noticed it. A scent I didn't recognize. Something floral, but with a musky undertone. New perfume. Emily had worn the same Chanel for years. I'd given it to her on our 5th anniversary, and she'd worn it faithfully ever since. Said it reminded her of me. This wasn't Chanel. I shook my head, trying to dispel the thoughts forming there. I was being ridiculous. People try new perfumes all the time. It meant nothing. In the shower, I let the hot water pound against my shoulders, washing away the tension of the day, or trying to at least. By the time I emerged wrapped in a towel, I'd almost convinced myself I was overreacting. Then I spotted Emily's iPad on her nightstand. I hesitated. We'd never been the type to check each other's devices. Trust had always been the foundation of our relationship. I remember teasing friends who monitored their partner's messages, saying I could never be with someone I didn't trust completely. But that unfamiliar perfume lingered in my nostrils. I picked up the iPad. It opened without requiring a password. Another thing that hadn't changed in 12 years. Emily's email appeared on the screen, and I scrolled through quickly, seeing nothing unusual. Just work correspondence, online purchase confirmations, and newsletters. I was about to put it down when a notification popped up from her text messages. A preview of a message from someone named Mark Taylor. Looking forward to tonight. Same place. My stomach dropped. Mark Taylor. Emily had mentioned him before, a new senior partner at her firm who'd transferred from the New York office. Brilliant legal mind, she'd called him, challenging but inspiring to work with. She hadn't mentioned they had regular meeting spots. I opened her messages, something I'd never done before, and scrolled through her conversation with Mark. Most of it seemed work-related, discussing case strategy and client meetings. But there was an undercurrent of something else. Inside jokes, references to conversations I wasn't part of, and increasingly mentions of dinners and drinks. La Fiora at 8, he'd written 3 days ago. La Fiora, the Italian restaurant where I'd proposed to Emily, our special place for anniversaries and celebrations. I remember the night I'd proposed, how nervous I'd been, the ring box burning a hole in my pocket, the way her eyes had filled with tears when I'd gotten down on one knee, the applause from nearby tables when she'd said yes. It was our place, sacred in our shared history, and she'd taken him there. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I put the iPad down, my hands shaking slightly. This didn't necessarily mean anything, I told myself. Colleagues meet for dinner all the time. Maybe she'd recommended our restaurant because the food was excellent. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But as I moved through the kitchen, mechanically chopping vegetables and boiling pasta, a plan formed in my mind. Our family tracking app was still on both our phones, something we'd set up years ago for safety reasons. I opened it and looked at Emily's location. She wasn't at her office downtown. The blue dot placed her exactly at La Fiora. I zoomed in on the map, as if somehow the pixelated image might reveal more. Was she sitting at our table drinking the baro we always ordered? Was he sitting across from her in my seat? I put down the knife I'd been using to mince garlic, my appetite completely gone. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. The late nights, the new perfume, the changed communication, and now dinner at our special restaurant with her brilliant new colleague. I picked up my phone, stared at it for a long moment, then typed a message that would either put my fears to rest or confirm my worst suspicions. Hope you and Mark enjoy the dinner. I hit send before I could reconsider, then watched the screen, heart pounding. 3 dots appeared immediately, indicating she was typing a response. They disappeared, then reappeared. She was struggling with what to say. Another bad sign. The response was almost immediate. What? What are you talking about? Then another. Jonathan, answer me. What do you mean? And another. I'm coming home right now. I didn't respond, just watched the tracking app as her blue dot began moving rapidly from La Fiora back toward our house. That was all the confirmation I needed. I put my phone down and stared at the half-prepared meal on our kitchen counter. 12 years. 12 years of building a life together. And she'd thrown it away for what? Excitement? Novelty? A brilliant legal mind? My hands were steady as I put away the food I'd been preparing. Pasta back in the cabinet, vegetables in the refrigerator, wine cork back in the bottle. Methodical, precise. The actions of a man holding himself together through sheer force of will. I heard her car pull into the driveway 20 minutes later, a trip that should have taken 40 minutes from her office, but only 15 from La Fiora. The front door opened and closed, and then she was there, standing in the kitchen doorway, slightly out of breath. Still in her work clothes, a sleek gray suit I didn't recognize, new like the perfume. Jonathan, she said, her voice carefully controlled. What was that text about? I looked at her, really looked at her. She was beautiful, always had been. Ash blonde hair cut in a professional bob, intelligent blue eyes, high cheekbones. Tonight, though, her makeup was more dramatic than what she usually wore to the office. Her lipstick was a deep red rather than her usual subtle pink. You tell me, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. You weren't at the office. A flash of something crossed her face. Panic, guilt, calculation before she composed herself. I was having dinner with clients. You know how these merger negotiations are at La Fiora? She blinked. Yes, the clients wanted Italian with Mark Taylor. Her composure slipped again. Mark was there. Yes, he's led counsel on the merger. Jonathan, why are you tracking my location and questioning me like this? I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. That's what you're upset about? That I checked your location on the app we both agreed to use? Not that you lied to me about working late. I was working, she insisted, moving into the kitchen and putting her purse down on the counter with deliberate care. Just not at the office. You know, client dinners are part of the job. And the new perfume, the new clothes, the new lipstick, are those part of the job too? Her hand went automatically to her throat, where a hint of the unfamiliar scent still lingered. I'm up for partner, Jonathan. Appearance matters. So does honesty in a marriage, I countered. Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. I'm too tired for this tonight. Can we please talk about your insecurities tomorrow? My insecurities? Classic deflection. I almost admired the legal maneuver, shifting blame, reframing the narrative. But I wasn't on the witness stand, and she wasn't going to cross-examine her way out of this. Why was Mark asking about same place in his text? How many times have you been to our restaurant with him? Her eyes widened. You read my text. You've been having an affair, I said. Not a question, but a statement. That's absurd, she snapped, but her eyes darted away from mine. Mark and I are colleagues. We work closely together on a complex case. Is that why you've been so distant? Why you suddenly need late-night meetings? Why you've changed everything from your perfume to how you text me? Emily grabbed a wine glass from the cabinet and poured herself a generous amount from the bottle I'd opened to breathe. I don't know what's gotten into you, but I don't appreciate being accused of infidelity because I'm successful and busy with my career. Don't do that, I said quietly. Don't make this about your career or my supposed insecurity. This is about you lying to me, about you meeting another man at the restaurant where I proposed to you. She took a long sip of wine, and when she lowered the glass, I could see her mind working, recalculating her approach. She'd always been brilliant at adapting mid-aru, finding the weakest point in an opponent's case and exploiting it. Okay, she said finally. I should have been upfront about having dinner with Mark. I knew you might feel threatened because I've mentioned how impressive he is professionally, and I didn't want to deal with that tonight. That's all this is. I stared at her. This woman I'd shared my life with, now standing before me like a stranger, constructing elaborate defenses against the simple truth. I thought of all the nights I'd held her, the mornings we'd woken up tangled together, the promises we'd made. How had we gone from that to this cold calculation, this elegant lying? I'm going to ask you once, I said, my voice low. Are you having an affair with Mark Taylor? She met my eyes unflinching. No. It was the perfect delivery. Direct, unwavering, confident. The kind of denial that wins in courtrooms and convinces juries. But I wasn't a jury. I was her husband, and I knew her tells. The slight tightening around her eyes. The way her right hand curled into a loose fist at her side. The barely perceptible swallow before she spoke. Small things. Things only someone who had studied her for 12 years would notice. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But the evidence was stacking up against her, and my gut was screaming that something was wrong. I'm going to stay at the Sharon tonight, I said, turning away from her. I need space to think. Jonathan, don't be ridiculous. This is your home. Is it? I asked, heading toward the bedroom to pack a small bag. Because right now, it doesn't feel like it. She followed me, her voice rising with each word. You're overreacting. This is exactly why I didn't tell you about the dinner. I knew you'd blow it out of proportion. I pulled a small duffel from the closet and threw in some clothes, my toiletry bag, and my laptop. Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me. The red lipstick stood out against her pale skin, a crimson gash that seemed to mock me. If you walk out that door, you're the one destroying this marriage, not me, she said. I zipped the bag closed and looked up at her. Maybe this marriage was already broken, and I'm just now seeing it. I walked past her, down the stairs, and out the front door. She didn't follow me. In my car, I sat for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. Had I just made a terrible mistake? Was I throwing away 12 years of marriage over paranoia and circumstantial evidence? But then I remembered the look in her eyes when I confronted her. Not confusion or hurt, but calculation. The way she'd turned my accusations around on me. The defensiveness about her texts rather than concern about my pain. I started the engine and drove away from the home we built together, uncertain of where my life was heading, but suddenly very certain about what I'd left behind. The Sharon was exactly as impersonal as I needed it to be, anonymous, comfortable, devoid of memories or emotional landmines. I checked in, rode the elevator to my room, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the generic cityscape painting on the wall. It could have been Seattle or any other mid-sized American city. Buildings, water, mountains, and the distance. Deliberately vague, designed to offend no one and please no one particularly either. My phone had been buzzing with texts from Emily, but I couldn't bring myself to read them yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and did something I never thought I'd do. I started investigating my own wife. Our shared cloud account contained photos, documents, and backups from both our devices. I hesitated only briefly before diving in, feeling like I was crossing a line, but needing to know the truth. I found nothing incriminating in her photos, just work shots, pictures of landscapes, and selfies I'd already seen. Her documents were mostly work-related, nothing personal that shed any light on what was happening. Then I checked the location history on our tracking app. Scrolling back through weeks of data, patterns emerged. Regular visits to Le Fiora, an address in Capitol Hill I didn't recognize, late nights that didn't match her office location. I plotted the data on a spreadsheet, my architect's mind needing to visualize the information. Rows and columns of dates, times, and locations formed a damning pattern. Emily had been lying about her whereabouts for at least 6 weeks. The Capitol Hill address appeared multiple times, always late at night, often with her staying for hours. I searched for the address online and discovered it was a luxury apartment building called the Emerson. I scrolled through their website, looking at photos of sleek, modern interiors with floor-to-ceiling windows and panoramic city views. The kind of place a successful attorney might live. Someone like Mark Taylor. Piece by piece, I built a picture of deception. My architect's mind, trained to see structures and connections, couldn't help but connect these dots into a clear design. But I needed more, something definitive. I finally opened her text messages, a flood of explanations, accusations, and pleas. You're being completely irrational. This is so unfair. Please come home so we can talk about this like adults. Your jealousy is the real problem here. Not once did she say, I love you, or I would never hurt you. Not once did she acknowledge how her behavior might have appeared to me. It was all about my failings, my overreactions, my insecurities. The last message sent about an hour ago simply read, Fine, stay at your hotel. We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email and did something desperate. I wrote to David Patterson, a college friend who now worked as a private investigator. I laid out the situation and asked for his help, feeling simultaneously ashamed and justified. His response came within minutes. I'll look into it. Send me the details you have. And John, I'm sorry, man. I forwarded him the locations, the timeline, and what little information I had about Mark Taylor. Then I took a shower, ordered room service I couldn't eat, and lay on the hotel bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep evaded me that night. I kept seeing Emily's face as she denied the affair, the perfect poker face that had almost convinced me. Almost. How many other lies had I believed over the years? How many half-truths and omissions had I accepted without question? Had our entire marriage been built on deception, or was this something new? I thought back to our beginning, meeting in a required humanities class our sophomore year of college. Her sharp mind and quick wit had captivated me from the first debate. We'd stayed up talking until sunrise that first night. The chemistry between us undeniable. She'd been driven even then, her path to law school, and eventually partner at a prestigious firm already mapped out. I'd admired her ambition, her clarity of purpose, and she'd appreciated my creativity. my ability to see the world differently through an architect's eyes. We'd grown up together in many ways, navigating the transition from students to professionals, from apartment renters to homeowners, from carefree 20s to established 30s. We'd supported each other through the death of my father, her mother's cancer scare, career setbacks, and triumphs. Or had we? Had she really been there for me when my dad died? Or had she been impatient with my grief, eager to get back to her normal routine? Had I truly celebrated her successes? Or had I felt threatened by her rapidly advancing career, while my own moved at a more measured pace? Memory is a tricky thing. The present colors the past, reshaping it to fit our current narrative. Was I now recasting our entire history in the shadow of suspected infidelity? Dawn found me still awake, no closer to answers, but filled with new questions. I showered again, dressed, and headed out to find coffee and something resembling breakfast. The morning was typically Seattle. Gray, misty, a fine drizzle that wasn't quite rain, but still required an umbrella. I found a cafe a block from the hotel and ordered a large black coffee and a blueberry muffin I had no appetite for. My phone buzzed. David got some preliminary info on Mark Taylor. Call when you can. I paid for my barely touched breakfast and stepped outside to call him. What did you find? I asked without preamble. Mark Taylor, 42, divorced, no children, senior partner at Bradshaw, Whitman, and Connors, transferred from their New York office 8 months ago, lives at the Emerson on Capitol Hill. That address you flagged, drives a black Tesla Model S, member of the exclusive Madison Club, competitive sailor. Sounds like quite the catch, I said bitterly. There's more, David continued. I've got a guy watching the Emerson. Taylor left for work about an hour ago. I'm heading over there now to do some recon. Also running background checks on his financials, previous relationships. Any red flags? Thanks, David, I said, genuinely grateful. I know this is awkward. No awkwardness, man. This is what friends do. You do the same for me. He paused. Oh, are you holding up? Not great, I admitted. Didn't sleep, can't eat. Usual betrayed husband stuff, I guess. Take care of yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I'll be in touch later today. I hung up and walked back to the hotel, not knowing what else to do with myself. I had projects at work that needed attention, but I couldn't focus on structural specifications or material selections. Not while my life was imploding. In my room, I tried to distract myself with TV, then reading, then sketching. One of my usual calming activities. Nothing worked. My mind kept returning to Emily, to the woman I thought I knew so well, who now seemed like a stranger. Around noon, I called my office and spoke with Delea, claiming a family emergency and asking her to reschedule my meetings for the rest of the week. She didn't press for details, just expressed concern and promised to handle everything. The Henderson presentation is Monday, she reminded me. Will you be back by then? Monday, 4 days away. The biggest pitch of the year for a waterfront development that could transform the firm's reputation. I'll be there, I promised, though I had no idea what state I'd be in by then. After hanging up, I forced myself to eat a sandwich from room service, knowing I needed to keep my strength up. Then I rented a car. I didn't want Emily tracking my own vehicle, and drove to the address in Capitol Hill I'd found in her location history. It was an upscale apartment building with a doorman and a sleek, modern facade, exactly as the website had shown. I sat in the car across the street watching the entrance, feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's life. Someone pathetic and suspicious. Not Jonathan Miller, respected architect and trusted husband, but that Jonathan Miller was gone, replaced by this new version. Suspicious, wounded, determined to uncover the truth. No matter how painful. I waited for hours, not sure what I was hoping to see. Emily wouldn't be here if she'd gone to work, or maybe she had taken a sick day. Maybe she and Mark were inside right now, laughing about my ridiculous accusations while they made love in his expensive apartment. The thought made me physically ill. My phone rang, startling me. David. Hey, I answered, my voice rough from lack of sleep. I've got something, he said without preamble. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? David's office was in a converted warehouse in Sodo, the industrial district south of downtown. The space was sparse but professional. A desk, filing cabinets, a couple of chairs for clients. No family photos or personal touches. His work required a certain detachment, I suppose. He looked exactly as he had in college. Stocky build, prematurely receding hairline, shrewd eyes that missed nothing. He'd always been observant, which made his career choice unsurprising. "John," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Wish we were meeting under better circumstances." I nodded, unable to find appropriate small talk for the situation. "Have a seat." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "I'll cut to the chase. I ran a background check on Mark Taylor and did some surveillance this morning." He slid a folder across the desk. I opened it with unsteady hands. Inside were photos. Emily and Mark entering La Fiora together, sitting at a corner table. Our table. Heads close together, hands touching across the white tablecloth. Emily laughing at something, he said, her face more animated than I'd seen it in months. And the final photo, the two of them kissing in the parking lot beside her car. The images blurred as unexpected tears filled my eyes. I'd suspected, known even, but seeing it was different, final, undeniable. The kiss wasn't a casual goodbye peck between colleagues. It was passionate, intimate. His hand tangled in her hair, her body pressed against his. The kind of kiss that speaks of familiarity, of desire, of a relationship far beyond professional. "When were these taken?" I asked, my voice a rasp. "Last night. After you texted her, she left in a hurry, but they had their goodbye in the parking lot first." I nodded, swallowing hard. So when she rushed home to me, she'd just been kissing him. I'm afraid so. I flipped through the other photos. More images of them together over the past few days. Entering his apartment building, having lunch at an outdoor cafe, walking close together through Pike Place Market. "There's more," David said quietly. Credit card statements showing hotel charges, a reservation at a cabin on Lake Chelan for this coming weekend in his name. But for two people. And this. He handed me a small evidence bag containing a man's watch. Not an expensive one, but distinctive. A vintage Omega with a worn leather strap. "Found it in her car this morning," David explained. "It was under the passenger seat. Might have slipped off during, well," I turned the watch over. The initials MT were engraved on the back. "I'm sorry, John," David said, and I could hear he meant it. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "What will you do?" he asked finally. I placed the watch carefully back in the evidence bag. "I need to think, process all this." "Of course, take the file. The evidence is yours." I stood, tucking the folder under my arm. "Thanks, David. What do I owe you?" He shook his head. "Nothing. Consider it payback for all those times you helped me through organic chemistry." I managed a weak smile. "That hardly seems equivalent. Just, take care of yourself, okay? And John, she doesn't deserve you. Remember that." I drove back to the hotel in a fog, the file on the passenger seat like a bomb waiting to detonate. At a stoplight, I checked my phone and found 3 missed calls from Emily and a text. "This is ridiculous. Jonathan, come home. We need to talk." I didn't respond. Back in my hotel room, I spread the evidence across the bed. Photos, credit card statements, the watch in its plastic bag, a timeline of betrayal, meticulously documented. I stared at it all, trying to make sense of how we'd gotten here. Had I been blind? Had there been signs I missed before the recent changes? Or had this genuinely come out of nowhere? A sudden derailment of what I'd thought was a solid relationship. I thought back over the past year, Emily's increasing discontentment with routine, her suggestions that we were stagnating, her admiration for Mark's adventurous career path, moving between cities and taking on high-profile cases. Maybe the signs had been there all along. Maybe I just hadn't wanted to see them. A particular memory surfaced. A dinner party at our house 3 months ago. Mark had been there newly arrived in Seattle. I remembered how animated Emily had been that evening, how she'd laughed at his stories, how her eyes had followed him around the room. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. She was being a good host, making a new colleague feel welcome. But now, in retrospect, the attention seemed pointed, intentional. Had it started that night, or had it been building even before he physically entered our lives? Had she been dissatisfied, looking for an escape, and he'd simply been the convenient option when he arrived? These questions would haunt me, I knew. But they weren't the most important ones. The most important question was, what would I do now? My phone rang. Emily again. This time, I answered. Jonathan, finally. She sounded relieved, but irritated. This has gone on long enough. Can you please come home so we can sort this out? Is he there? I asked. A pause. Is who there? What are you talking about? Mark. Your lover. Is he at our house? Her voice turned cold. You're being absurd. I told you Mark is a colleague. Stop lying to me, I shouted, surprising myself with the force of my anger. I have proof, Emily. Photos of you together at La Fiora at his apartment building, kissing in the parking lot. I have his watch that you left in your car. I have credit card statements showing hotel charges and a reservation for a cabin this weekend. Silence stretched across the line. Then in a completely changed voice, smaller, less certain. You had me followed. Does it matter? The point is, I know the truth now. Another long silence. Then it's not what you think. I laughed bitterly. It never is it? What is it then, Emily? Explain to me how you ended up kissing your colleague and spending nights at his apartment. Explain the cabin reservation for this weekend. I'm fascinated to hear what explanation could possibly make this okay. You went through my personal information, my credit cards. Her voice rose indignantly. That's what you're upset about, your privacy, not the fact that you've been cheating on your husband of 12 years. She started, then stopped. This isn't a conversation we should have over the phone. Come home and we can talk about this properly. No, I said firmly. I'm not coming home. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. I need time to think. Jonathan, please. I hung up, cutting off whatever justification or manipulation she was about to attempt. My hands were shaking, my breathing uneven. I felt like I was having a panic attack. I went to the minibar, pulled out a small bottle of whiskey, and drank it in one burning gulp, then another. The alcohol didn't help, but it gave me something to do, besides fall apart. My phone buzzed with texts. I ignored them. It rang again. I turned it off. For the next 3 days, I functioned on autopilot. I called my office and arranged to work remotely, claiming a family emergency. I moved from the Sheraton to an Airbnb in Ballard, not wanting Emily to track me down. I communicated with David via email, ignoring the barrage of messages from my wife. On the 4th day, I finally turned my phone back on and listened to her voicemails. They progressed from angry to pleading to tearful. You're overreacting. This is completely unfair. Your jealousy has always been a problem. Please call me back. We need to talk about this. 12 years can't end like this. Jonathan, I'm sorry. Please come home. I miss you. The final message was different, calmer, more controlled. Jonathan, I've retained a divorce attorney. Since you refused to communicate with me, I had no choice. If you want to discuss this like adults, you know where to find me. Otherwise, expect to hear from my lawyer. So that was it. She was moving forward with a divorce. Part of me was relieved. At least there would be no more pretense, no more gaslighting, no more lies. Another part was devastated. Despite everything, I had still harbored a small hope that we might somehow work through this. I called my own attorney, a longtime friend named Michael Weiss, who specialized in family law. I'm sorry to hear this, John, he said, after I'd explained the situation. Do you have a prenuptial agreement? No, I admitted. We got married right out of college before either of us had any assets to protect. Okay. Washington is a community property state, so generally all assets acquired during the marriage will be split 50-50. Given the circumstances, though, we might be able to argue for a more favorable division. I don't care about the money, I said. Honestly, I just want this over with as quickly and cleanly as possible. I understand, but you should care about the money. Your future depends on it. Send me everything you have. The evidence of the affair, financial records, property information, and John, don't move back into the house. It could complicate things. I promised to email him everything and hung up, feeling hollow. This was really happening. My marriage was ending. I spent the evening compiling documents for Michael, organizing the evidence of Emily's betrayal into a neat digital package. It felt clinical, detached, like I was preparing a case study rather than documenting the collapse of my personal life. As I worked, I thought about the future, a future without Emily, without our home, our routines, our shared friends, a future where I would be alone again after 12 years of partnership. The thought was both terrifying and strangely liberating. In the morning, I woke to an email from Emily. No subject line, just a single sentence in the body. Can we meet? Just to talk. No lawyers. I stared at the message for a long time, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the lawyers handle everything. But another part needed closure, needed to hear whatever she had to say face to face. I replied with one word. When? Her response came immediately. Tonight, 7 p.m., La Fiora. La Fiora, our restaurant. The scene of her betrayal. Was this a power move on her part or an attempt at symbolic reconciliation? Either way, I didn't appreciate it. Neutral location, I wrote back. Starbucks on Broadway and Pine, 7 p.m., she agreed. I spent the day alternating between dreading the meeting and rehearsing what I would say. I wanted to remain calm, rational, above the emotional fray. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing how deeply she'd wounded me, but I also wanted answers. Why, Mark? Why now? After 12 seemingly happy years, had she ever loved me? Or had I been a convenient stepping stone in her meticulously planned life? A stable, respectable husband to complete the perfect professional woman picture. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, choosing a table in the corner where we could speak privately, but still be in public. The cafe was busy enough that our conversation wouldn't be overheard, but not so crowded that we'd be disturbed. Emily walked in precisely at 7 to wear, punctual as always. She looked thinner than when I'd last seen her, her face drawn with dark circles under her eyes. She wore jeans and a sweater rather than her usual professional attire, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry except her wedding ring, which surprised me. She spotted me and walked over, hesitating before sitting down across from me. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak yet. "I ordered you a latte," I said finally, gesturing to the cup in front of the empty chair. "Vanilla extra shot. No foam." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You remember 12 years, Emily?" "I remember everything." Her eyes dropped to the table. "Jonathan, before you start," I interrupted. "I want to be clear about something. I'm not here for manipulations or half-truths. If you can't be completely honest with me right now, there's no point to this meeting." She nodded slowly. "That's fair." She took a deep breath. "I was having an affair with Mark. It started 3 months ago. The admission hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd already known. Hearing her say it made it real, in a way the photos and evidence hadn't quite managed." "Why?" I asked. The only question that really mattered. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, staring into it as if it held answers. It wasn't planned. We were working late on the Westridge case. One thing led to another. It was exciting and new and different. "Different from me," I clarified. She looked up. "Different from us, from what we'd become." "What?" "Jonathan, when was the last time we really talked? Not about work or schedules or household logistics, but really connected." I wanted to argue to defend our relationship, but I found myself thinking back, trying to remember our last meaningful conversation. It had been a while. "So you were bored," I said flatly. "And instead of talking to me about it, you decided to sleep with someone else." She flinched. "That's not fair. None of this is fair, Emily. Not to me." "I know," she whispered. "I know that now." I leaned forward. "What do you want from this meeting?" "Why are we here?" She met my eyes directly for the first time. I ended it with Mark. The day after you left, I realized what I was throwing away, what I was risking. Jonathan, I made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life. But I love you. I've always loved you. And I want to try to save our marriage if you're willing. I sat back studying her face. She seemed sincere, her eyes bright with unshed tears. But I thought she was sincere when she denied the affair too. How can I ever trust you again? I asked. Every time you're late from work, every business trip, every client dinner, I'll always wonder, that's no way to live, Emily. I know it won't be easy, she acknowledged. I know I've damaged your trust, maybe beyond repair, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy. Complete transparency. I'll change jobs if necessary. Anything. Why should I believe you're serious? Why is this not just another manipulation? Because your affair got exposed. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper, sliding it across the table to me. I submitted my resignation today, effective immediately. I unfolded the paper, a copy of her resignation letter to the law firm. I've also scheduled an appointment with a marriage counselor, she continued. For next week, if you'll come. She paused, and I told my parents everything. They're disappointed in me, as they should be. I refolded the letter, processing what she was saying. These were significant steps. Giving up her partnership track at the firm, facing her parents, who had always adored me. It showed a level of commitment I hadn't expected. What about Mark? I asked. Her eyes hardened slightly. It's over. Completely over. I made that clear to him. And he just accepted that after all the hotel rooms and planned weekends away. He didn't have a choice, she said simply. I told him I was trying to save my marriage. And if I say no, if I proceed with the divorce, will you go running back to him? She shook her head. No, that's over regardless of what happens. Between us, it was a mistake from the beginning. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. I'd gotten good at reading her over the years, but now I doubted my ability to see through her lies. How could I ever be sure she was telling the truth? I need time, I said finally. This isn't a decision I can make sitting in a Starbucks. She nodded, disappointment flickering across her face, but quickly controlled. I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be at home when, if you're ready to talk more. She stood, hesitated, then added, I'm sorry, Jonathan. Truly, I know that doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know that. I watched her walk away, conflicted emotions churning inside me. Part of me wanted to call her back to try to salvage what we had. Another part knew it could never be the same. That the trust once broken might be impossible to fully restore. I remained at the table long after she left, turning over my options in my mind. Forgiveness and reconciliation, divorce, and a fresh start. Neither path seemed clear or easy. My phone buzzed with a text from David. How did it go? I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Finally, I typed, She wants to reconcile. Says she ended it with Mark resigned from her job. His reply came quickly. Significant moves. What are you thinking? I don't know yet, I answered. Honestly, need to process. I sat there for another hour watching people come and go. Couples holding hands, friends laughing together, solitary figures hunched over laptops, normal lives untouched by betrayal and heartbreak. I envied them. Their ordinary evenings, their uncomplicated relationships, their intact worlds. Eventually, I walked back to my rented apartment, the night air cool against my face. Seattle was beautiful at night, lights reflecting off the water, the Space Needle illuminated against the dark sky. We'd moved here together after college, enchanted by the city's blend of urban energy and natural beauty. It had been our mutual decision, our shared adventure. Now it felt tainted, every landmark holding memories of a relationship that had been revealed as a lie. Over the next week, I threw myself into work, finding solace in the clean lines and precise measurements of architecture. I moved from the Airbnb to a month-to-month apartment in Fremont, acknowledging that my exile from home might be longer than initially thought. Emily texted daily, never pushing for a decision, but letting me know she was there. Simple messages. Thinking of you. Hope you're doing okay. The counselor's appointment is still on the books if you want to come. I consulted with Michael about my legal options, discussing what reconciliation might look like from a legal standpoint. We talked about post-nuptial agreements, formal separation agreements, conditions for resuming the marriage. Whatever you decide are, he advised, protect yourself legally. Hope for the best. Plan for the worst. On day 10 of our separation, I made my decision. I wouldn't be attending the counseling session. I wouldn't be moving back home. I wouldn't be giving Emily a second chance. The trust was broken irreparably. I could never look at her again without seeing those photographs, without thinking of her in another man's arms, without wondering if she was lying to me. I called Michael and told him to proceed with the divorce. Then I texted Emily. I've made my decision. I'm moving forward with the divorce. Please direct all communication to Michael Weiss from now on. Her response came within seconds. Please don't do this. We can work this out. I love you. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone and poured myself a scotch, a real one this time, not the minibar variety. I'd given myself permission to get drunk tonight, to feel the full weight of what I was losing, and then to move on. 3 drinks in, someone knocked on my apartment door. I checked the peephole and saw Emily standing there, her eyes red from crying, her hair disheveled. I hesitated, then opened the door. You shouldn't be here, I said. I had to come, she replied, her voice breaking. You can't end 12 years with a text message, Jonathan. You ended 12 years when you slept with Mark. She flinched as if I'd struck her. I know I did, but people make mistakes. Terrible, unforgivable mistakes. And sometimes they get second chances. Not this time, I said, my voice steady despite the alcohol. I can't do it, Emily. I can't pretend this never happened. I can't rebuild a life on a foundation that's been shattered. Please, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Please don't throw us away. I looked at her. This woman I'd loved for so long, now a stranger to me. I felt nothing. No anger anymore, no pain, just emptiness where love had been. I'm not throwing us away, I said quietly. You already did that. I'm just acknowledging it's broken beyond repair. Jonathan. Goodbye, Emily, I said, closing the door gently but firmly. I heard her sob once loudly before footsteps retreated down the hallway. I leaned my forehead against the door, expecting to feel something. Grief, regret, doubt. But I felt only certainty and surprisingly relief. I was making the right decision, the only decision that preserved my self-respect and sanity. My phone buzzed with a text. I turned it back on after my 3rd drink, maybe hoping for a distraction. Maybe secretly hoping Emily would reach out again despite my resolve. It was her. I'll be at our spot tomorrow at 7 o'clock. One last chance to talk. Please come. Our spot? Not La Fiora this time, but the viewpoint at Kerry Park, where we'd had our first date, overlooking the Seattle skyline and Mount Rainier. It was a naked appeal to nostalgia, to shared history. I didn't respond. The next day, I threw myself into work finalizing the Henderson presentation. The project was exactly what I needed. Complex enough to require my full attention, creative enough to engage my passion for design. For hours, I lost myself in floor plans and elevations, material selections, and structural calculations. But as evening approached, Emily's message nagged at me. Our spot, Kerry Park at sunset. The place where 12 years ago I'd first realized I was falling in love with her. We'd stood side by side, watching the colors of the sky change as the sun dipped behind the Olympics. She'd slipped her hand into mine, and something had clicked into place. A beginning, and now, possibly an ending, in the same location. At 6:45, my resolve wavered. What if I was making a mistake? What if years from now I look back on this moment as the one where I chose pride over love, punishment over forgiveness? No, this wasn't about pride or punishment. It was about recognizing that some things once broken can't be put back together, not in any way that resembles what they once were. At 7:15, my phone rang. Emily, I let it go to voicemail. At 7:30, another text. I'm still here. Please come. At 8, I understand now. I'm sorry for everything. At 8:45, David called. I answered, puzzled by the late contact. John, he said, his voice tight. There's been an accident. Emily's car on Queen Anne Hill. It's bad. The world tilted sideways. What? What happened? I don't have all the details. A witness said she pulled out onto the avenue without looking, hit by a delivery truck. They've taken her to Harborview. I was already grabbing my keys. My jacket. I'm on my way. The drive to Harborview Medical Center was a blur. Red lights that I barely noticed. Other cars that seemed to move in slow motion. My heart pounding so loudly I could hear it over the engine. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not after everything. The emergency room was chaos. Bright lights, urgent voices, the antiseptic smell that never quite masks the underlying scent of blood and fear. I gave Emily's name at the desk and was directed to a waiting area where a police officer stood talking to a doctor. They looked up as I approached. Mr. Miller, the officer asked. You're Emily Miller's husband? Yeah, I said automatically, though legally that was still true. How is she? The doctor stepped forward. I'm Dr. Ramirez. Your wife sustained serious injuries in the accident. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding. She's in surgery now. Will she? I couldn't finish the question. Her condition is critical, Dr. Ramirez said carefully. The next few hours are crucial. Are you aware of her medical directives? Any religious preferences regarding blood transfusions or organ support? I nodded numbly. We done all the responsible adult paperwork years ago. She has no religious restrictions. Full measures. I have medical power of attorney. The doctor nodded. There's a private waiting area for families of surgical patients. The officer has a few questions for you, and then I'll have someone take you there. I turned to the police. Officer, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a weary face. I understand this is a difficult time, she said, but I need to ask about your wife's state of mind before the accident. State of mind? She hesitated. Witnesses report that she appeared distressed. The accident, well, there were no skid marks. She didn't attempt to stop or swerve. The implication hung in the air between us. We're separated, I said finally. She was upset about the divorce, but Emily wouldn't. She's not the type to. I understand, the officer said gently. Just standard questions. Here's my card if you think of anything else. A volunteer escorted me to a smaller waiting room with softer lighting and actual comfortable chairs. A few other shell-shocked people sat scattered around the space, each in their private bubble of fear and hope. I sat and stared at the wall, trying to process what was happening. Hours ago, I'd been certain I was done with Emily forever. Now I was her next of kin, possibly facing decisions about her care, her life. The universe had a sick sense of humor. David arrived about an hour later, looking as disheveled as I felt. He handed me a coffee and sat beside me. Any news? I shook my head. Still in surgery. We sat in silence for a while before he spoke again. I heard from my contact at the scene. The witness statements are concerning. I looked at him. Concerning how? He sighed heavily. John, I shouldn't be telling you this, but several witnesses said it looked intentional. She was parked near Cary Park for over 2 hours. When she finally left, she pulled out directly into the path of the truck. Didn't look, didn't hesitate. The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. Cary Park, our spot, where she'd been waiting for me. She texted me, I said, my voice hollow. Ask me to meet her there. One last chance to talk, she said. David placed a hand on my shoulder. This isn't your fault, isn't it? I whispered. If I'd just gone to meet her, you couldn't have known, he insisted. And you weren't responsible for her choices. Choose? Such a sanitized word for what might have happened. Had Emily been so desperate? So broken by my rejection that she decided to end her life, or had it been a terrible accident, a moment of distraction, in an emotional state? I would never know for certain. The ambiguity would haunt me either way. Hours passed in that waiting room. Other families came and went, some with good news, faces transformed by relief. Others with the worst news, their grief palpable in the small space. I remained suspended in uncertainty, waiting for word of Emily's fate. David stayed with me, leaving only briefly to get more coffee and sandwiches I couldn't eat. He didn't offer platitudes or false reassurances. He just sat, a solid presence beside me in the endless night. At 3:17 a.m., Dr. Ramirez returned, his face grave. I stood, my legs unsteady beneath me. "Mr. Miller," he said quietly, "I'm very sorry. Your wife suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage during surgery. We did everything we could, but the injuries were too severe. The words didn't seem to connect to any meaning at first. Then they crashed into me like a physical blow. She's gone." He nodded. "I'm very sorry for your loss." David's hand was on my shoulder again, steadying me as the room swayed. "Would you like to see her, Doctor?" Ramirez asked gently. I nodded, unable to form words. He led me down hushed corridors to a small, dimly lit room. Emily lay on a bed, a sheet pulled up to her chest. Someone had cleaned her face, brushed her hair. If not for the unnatural stillness, the absence of the small movements that signal life, the rise and fall of breath, the flutter of eyelids, she might have been sleeping. I approached slowly, as if afraid to wake her. Her skin was cool when I touched her hand. I interlaced my fingers with hers one last time. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." For what exactly? I wasn't sure. For not meeting her at Cary Park, for refusing to try again, for not seeing the depth of her despair, for failing to protect her even from herself. Or maybe I was apologizing for something larger, for the way love can twist into its opposite, for the cruelty of human hearts, for the impossibility of ever truly knowing another person, even one you've shared a life with. I thought of all our years together, the good and the bad, the joy and the pain, the Emily I'd fallen in love with in college, brilliant and ambitious and full of life, the Emily who'd held my hand at my father's funeral, her quiet strength keeping me upright when I thought I might collapse, the Emily who'd betrayed me with another man, destroying the trust we'd built over 12 years. All gone now, all versions of her erased in a moment of impact, of metal against metal, of life against death. I stood there for a long time, holding her hand, saying goodbye to the woman I had loved and the future we would never have. Then I gently placed her hand back on the bed, leaned down to kiss her forehead, and walked out of the room without looking back. Outside the hospital, the sky was just beginning to lighten, the first hints of dawn touching the horizon. David waited by his car to drive me home. "What now?" he asked as we pulled away from the hospital. I gazed out at the city waking up around us, people starting their normal days, unaware that my world had just collapsed. "I don't know," I answered truthfully. "I just don't know. In the coming days, I would have to notify family and friends, make funeral arrangements, deal with the legal complexities of death occurring during divorce proceedings, sort through the remnants of our shared life." But in that moment, watching Seattle emerge from darkness into a new day, I felt nothing but a profound emptiness, a void where anger, grief, and love had once battled for supremacy. Emily was gone. Our story was over. And I was left to carry the weight of all that had happened, all that might have been, and all that could never be undone. The light turned red and David stopped the car. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. When I opened them again, the light had changed to green and we were moving forward into whatever came next. Music,